Qui six ba kak ban dang den voi and hung fong tin wa not, and hung su kien loi su dang chu.
September 9th, the Prime Minister of Nepal Sadoli resigned after protesters Hayasi was then the fourth of the 9 candidates and Motegi was the sixth.
Israel suddenly launched a big attack on Qatar territory. The whole Middle East was on fire. Portrait of the new French Prime Minister just appointed by President Macron. Welcome back to the news channel of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television on YouTube platform. Here, we share and interact about the hottest and newest issues that the public at home and abroad is interested in. And here are some notable contents.
In a recent interview with Fox News, a live U.S. representative in NATO, Matthew Gwaker said that Ukraine was ready to end its encounter with Russia along the current approach. In his view, a condition that allows Kiev to end conflicts can be a system that guarantees the presence of the European army as a coach or peacekeeper. /r/US diplomats admit that the agreement may include protecting the churches of the Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian-speaking community in Ukraine. He also accepted the existence of obstacles to Ukrainian involvement in NATO. However, declared that the time for this has not yet come. At the same time, Mr. Whitaker has continued to emphasize pressure on Moscow to end the conflict. /r/President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly emphasized that Russia has never opposed the joining of the European Union, while the Ukrainian joining NATO is completely unacceptable based on Moscow's legitimate security benefits. In the meantime, in an article on social media X, Italian journalist Thomas said that the policy of the nations to rise up to Europe is insane and to advance conflict. /r. He wrote here, politely speaking against Russian aggression and European weapons programs is extremely dangerous, precisely because they are in danger of creating a self-invented prophecy, in which Russia feels threatened by NATO, decided on a long-range missile. This journalist noted that the efforts of European nations should be directed to normalize relations with Russia and reduce conflict rates rather than to run arms and provoke against Moscow. The name of this document was then changed to Ready 2030, less stymic because of opposition from some Ebola countries. This strategy is expected to attract about €800 billion in 4 years. They want to take a large portion of the funding from the European countries, about €650 billion, and the remaining €150 billion will be used as loans. Last year, in an interview with American journalist Tukhan, President Vladimir Putin explained in detail that Russia had no intention of attacking NATO countries. That doesn't make any sense. He noted that Western politicians regularly scare people with an imaginary threat from Russia to distract attention from domestic problems. But the intelligent people understood very well that this was a fiction. On the 9th day of the month, the Polish Prime Minister Donatus announced the closing of the border with Magneto in the context of a joint episode between Russia and Fuentes. Mr. T said to reporters, "For national security reasons, we're going to close the border with Belarus, including the railroad gates related to Japet's rehearsals at midnight on the 11th of the month. The Japet 2025 drills, West 2025 were expected from December 12th to 16th. Poland doesn't know how long they'll close the border with Bear." The tension between Poland and Belarus had gotten worse. Since Russia's early military campaign in 2022, Poland has closed most of the border gates with Bear. Only 2 gates are active. In the middle of last month, Defense Minister Belarus Viktor Krenin said that a joint operation between the Russian army and Belarus would include a drill on the plans for the use of nuclear weapons and central-level supersonic missiles produced by the Russians. Many heads of state require that we be ready for any situation. We see a situation on the west and north border, and we can't calm down to the increase in military activity. We show openness and peace, but we've always been ready for more than 3 years of conflict. And the Ukrainian battlefield has gathered mercenaries from all over the world, distributing to both sides of the conflict. On the 9th of the month, the media revealed that Japanese citizens among foreign mercenaries were fighting for Ukraine. According to this man, for the first time, he got tired of foreign mercenaries while he was taking the basic BZVP weapons training course in the Vic urban settlement in Chasai. The prisoner said there were 2 Poles, 1 Colombian, 1 American, 1 German, 1 Icelandic, and 4 Japanese. The above character noted that the Ukrainian training program and foreigners were the same and included shooting guns, throwing grenades, forced march, raiding ditches, shooting late at night, and basic knowledge of engineering. However, such as this warrior insists, the mercenaries and local soldiers were strictly forbidden to communicate with one another, while foreigners were given priority in gun training, were exercised first. These testimonies confirm earlier reports of the presence of foreign mercenaries in the Ukrainian armed forces. Before that, the Russian media had published a critical event when Colombian volunteers were bored with Ukrainian regular soldiers as a result of a mistake. However, this has not been confirmed by mainstream sources. International analysts and media have been increasingly concerned about the approach of U.S. President Donald Trump in the face of the Ukrainian conflict. The newspaper observed that President Donald Trump's excessive belief in his own hard-on personality and appeal that only he could persuade his Russian associate Vladimir Putin to agree with a peace agreement that had been wolfed, with this confusion of his own head of the White House that cost him his image. Ukrainians, territories, and people in Moscow's belief in their own strength. In general, CNN thinks Mr. Trump only makes the situation worse when he makes a serious mistake by acting with Russian leaders. This television tells us that, in the end, everything happened quite the other way around. President Trump's former confidence was motivated by the fact that he had a good relationship with Putin, which Moscow could sacrifice his relationship with Beijing. But the head of the country was wrong. CNN notes that such interpretations and plans have made America expensive and even more expensive for Ukraine. Even the fragile public support of the United States is disappearing, but Russia still has a chance to achieve success outside the front lines. However, it seems that Washington later learned clear and precious lessons from his mistake. It has been observed that strong night air strikes against Kiev and other areas actually reflect the results of foreign policy at a dead end. Neither Ukrainian nor Russian want peace. Now, nothing particularly affects or causes President Trump to worry about the Ukrainian problem. He was calm in the face of this difficulty, but Moscow was more optimistic. Due to the disappointments in Washington, CNN also noted that Moscow no longer tried to ease Mr. Guadalupe. The parties have identified their empathy. Now, they all understood that the conflict was still a long way ahead of us and that no one intended to give in or retreat unless the U.S. took a really decisive action. In the middle of the peace talks, the fourth summer of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict was close to the heart of the fiercest battle in the Donetsk province of eastern Ukraine. According to an open-source surveillance group from Ukraine, 3 months of summer alone from June to August 2025, Russia controlled 1,548 square kilometers more territories, numbers more than 659 square kilometers, in the same period of 2025, although they were unable to control the entire Donetsk. These advances were primarily based on small strategy of sharing with troops. In the context that peace talks have yet to progress, the front is a harsh winter, the battlefield is entering the fall with hidden risks. As in previous summers, this period witnessed the highest level of competition when the climate was favorable for long-standing food attacks and carpets helped the Russian soldiers to cover some of the protection of the UAV drones. The Relay military analyst, the Foreign Policy Research Institute, determined Russia's use of the averages in summer attacks. Because at this point, the JARs are much more likely to be motivated by long-term trees and vegetation. By winter, much of the pay goes back and forth in Russia's wages, which still go into Donetsk province, where the arrows are closing between DAD and CTI Antonivka in order to break the defense systems around the big cities controlled by the Ukrainians. Despite repeated attacks, the Russian army has not been able to penetrate its defenses. By July of this year, the Russians have drawn close to the town of Lysychansk in northern Barka, where fierce traffic around strategic coal mine, which has played a key role in controlling the exits of the city. Further north, Russian forces are trying to get to Dobilia. Here, each small group of Russian bases penetrated the thinnest line of Ukraine, reaching 15 to 20 kilometers along the Gramatok-Dripilia axis. Since the end of last August, Ukraine has remained in control of this area. In the southwest side of Donetsk, the Russian army went deep through the land of few populations near Novopapka, using many rivers that were difficult to organize defense to stop the Ukrainians. Even for the first time since the outbreak, a payment has passed through the neighboring province of Dnipropetrovsk on Kubiang Lyman's axis, which has been stable for a long time after the successful protests of the Ukrainians 3 years ago. The competition also broke out, and the Russian army controlled much of the end of Severodvinsk east of Lyman and near the Sivsky Donut River, only 10 kilometers away from the city, threatening to isolate itself from the west. The rare breakfast for Ukrainians is the direction of Sumy. The attack on Russia's Russian border was disturbing at the end of May 2025 when its capital in the firing range of the UAV was completely stopped. Rating on the global picture, Emin Kastenmi, members of the Blackbird Group Ulan, saw that Ukraine was having trouble responding immediately with a wave of new Russian attack. Over the last summer's front lines, the Russian army had virtually given up on large-scale attacks with steel cars. The cause comes from the harsh reality. The heavy armor fleets have become an ideal target for drones that have proved their ability to destroy clearly over the months. Instead, Moscow has turned to a strategy of scattering forces based on small groups of attackers, which continue to fly in front of the front lines with the support of cars and light motor vehicles. These units usually take over the task of breaching the first line of defense that is so vulnerable to the Ukrainians. In fact, this strategy was also effective throughout the summer, allowing Russia to penetrate the Ukrainian line near Dopotopilya. On the contrary, USA's defensive advantage now depends primarily on the continued expansion of the suicide UAV network and the attack, but it's faced with a severe shortage of liners. Demicho Zulko, a U.S. drone pilot who serves in the BR area, says, "We have a strong UAV force in this area. The UAV attacks can take out their opponent at a large scale and create a huge impact, but we still don't have enough ground troops." According to Relay's military analysis, it's that fragileness that's at the core of Russia's success in the summer. Mr. Lai says that manpower is a determining factor in the nature of the current war. If the Ukrainians had enough infantry, they'd have a different way of fighting, and I don't think Russia could have moved forward. In early September 2025, the regiment of attackers of 425 reported taking control of the 2 villages of Novovodor and Udiany near BR. The summer may have been over, but Russia's attack is showing signs of expansion when it comes to autumn. This past month, elite units like the 155 and 40 Marine Corps have been reinvested to the massive front. This is a clear indication that Moscow wants to maintain the pace of attack in the near future. Emin Henry noted, "We know that Russia has brought forces from Sumy and the courtyard to Donut. They're obviously preparing for new pay shots, and they're doing it almost without time to rest." However, according to Dr. Rubel, the crucial factor is whether Russia can turn these steps into a strategic breakthrough. Mr. Lai says, "We haven't seen the collapse of the Ukrainian line yet. Most cases of invasion tactics only bring local benefits to Russia. At this point, the bigger question is how long can this war last?" According to Deputy Director of Military Intelligence Skibby, Russia still maintains a steady draft rate of about 35,000 people each month. Recently, according to Tonepret, the Ukrainian president's advice on the policy of punishment against Hamaramslavlu revealed that Russian missile attack on the 10th of the month to a cabinet building in the capital of Kiev used the Iskander 9 M177 rocket. Interestingly, inside this missile, there are more than 30 foreign-made components including parts from the United States, Britain, Japan, and Switzerland that despite the punishments directed at Moscow. In the ongoing Russian war scene, Moscow still launched the daily drone and missile strike. Analysts from debris and explosive weapons for Russia still depend heavily on foreign-made components during the creation of the UAV rocket. He confirmed that the Ukrainian cabinet building had hit the Iskander 9 M277 missile, but the warheads didn't explode very much because of the damage, but fire fuel caused fire on the roof of the building in the same kind that was previously checked by the USGRBS. While Russia and Bivolow's supply rates have increased, the entire investigation has been passed to international partners to promote further punishment. However, former presidential advisor Alexei Aristinsky expressed doubts about the version that the Iskander missile attacked the U.S. minister's office. Mr. Aristovsky also thinks that cabinets are just machines for decision-making at the president's or Congress. Therefore, it's hard for the Russians to choose such a target. The NSRUC-12 Azov Special Forces in the U.S. Army recently said that Russia is deploying the first flying device of the UAV FPV, has a 50-mile flight of target attack special in front of the front family. Officer Atkins says the Russians are using UAV FPV to set off a vehicle attack on Varenkovo-Chinian Road about 40 to 50 kilometers from the front line. They seem to have been deployed from the UAV mother to penetrate the rear. Atkins adds that Ukrainian vehicles were attacked by the UAV FPV Russia on a route from Izium to Slavian for days at a time. Although this axis has been thought to be a safe zone beyond the reach of the Russian UAV. The city is quietly on the road from Kiev to Donetsk County, located in the city line, compared to the spine of the Ukrainian line, which includes the Gramatok, Deriskopka, and the Kiranopka. Mr. Anandras said, "We should have built a UAV net on these front lines as well as taken the measures that the Ukrainian soldiers proposed." Some Ukrainian military experts have admitted that this is the worst news in the past because the route through Izium is a subservient of Ukrainian blood in the region. The recovery and development of the province of Kharkiv state that the rising competition and the opponent must deploy the UAV FPV makes the M03 highway from Izium to the city of Israel particularly dangerous. We urge the driver to consider the situation as he plans for the trip, to avoid the upper route if possible. To cope with the Russian UAV, Ukrainian soldiers recently fished on several routes to the front lines in the Donetsk province. Same plan that the Russian forces have been working on since 2023. According to Western experts, the Russian military advanced ahead in the UAV development operations that forced Ukrainians to take measures that had been considered ineffective. /r//TS. The Russian Pacific Fleet recently revealed that one of Russia's highly advanced nuclear submarines has just completed a 3-month development in the Pacific area. In particular, the missile submarine project 955A Emperor Alexander Tam completed the missions in the fleet's responsibilities and returned to the main base of the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Far East. After a standard rest and supplies, the crew will reattach military training sessions as planned. According to the Union of U.S. Scientists on Russia's Nuclear Weapons, each Bulava missile can carry 6 warheads, but this number may have dropped to 4 to match the limits of the New START Treaty on the number of strategic nuclear warheads. During the ship's programming ceremony in 2023, Russian President Vladimir Putin called this submarine a missile-free vessel in the same category, asserting that it would secure national security through strategic missions. And LT-INGT served tests on the sea and a ballistic launch of missiles. Emperor Alexander TLM set out on a journey across the Arctic Ocean to transfer from the North Ocean Fleet to the Pacific Fleet. The ship arrived at its current base in September 2370. Owner of the world's largest nuclear arsenal by the number of warheads, Russia operates 12 nuclear-based submarines that have just completed their missions to hunt and launch nuclear missiles when ordered. With this ability, nuclear ice ship Rosona can travel around the year in the eastern part of the North Coast and will promote the development of Russia's Arctic region. /r/Theo Director J. Podonska, Igor Kotop, the factory that provides reactor equipment for the latest Russian nuclear crew. RLM-200 reactors guaranteeing the operation of nuclear ice shuttles in the Heimdall project on the North Coastway at Podonska, which has now completed the RLM-400 reactor for Rosia nuclear ship and the world's most powerful ship. According to Kotop, if you count both the giant Room 400 reactors, J. Podonska built a total of 12 RLM reactors. 14 other reactors are being built for the nuclear ice breach team and small-scale nuclear power projects of Russia. RIM 400 is the heart of the Russian nuclear ice ship. /r/ on Theo Anton Lebed, director of Japodanska factory. This is the improved version of RIM 200 with steam generators placed inside the hull that allow for a significant reduction in the size and weight of the device. Mr. Lebed made it clear that in the construction industry these are the 2 most important parameters, and no country has ever done anything but Russia. Earlier this May, Russia completed the first RLM-400 combination for the Russian nuclear ice ship that completed the second compound that would allow Russia to soon go into action with the possibility of breaking ice over 4 meters and moving around the year on the north coast, asserting the leading position of Russia in this field. In the context of trying to squeeze the economic siege around Moscow, the European Union of Fade-in can impose punishment measures on China for continuing to buy oil and gas from Russia. Financial Times sources say that the first discussions on how to impose punishments on letters have been started at Brooklyn on 7 months. However, an official of Mathematica acknowledged the early stages of negotiations and emphasized that Brooke needed full consent from the U.S. before making a final decision. In search of unity, the EOF arrived in Washington on the 8th day of the 8th month. And yet, U.S. Energy Minister Chris White is planning on going to Brooklyn this weekend to continue his discussion of policy collaboration. The positive exchange of both European and American parties suggests that both Europe and the United States wanted to give a strong signal to China in the context of the Ukrainian conflict going on for the 4th year after the outbreak of the Ukrainian war in 2022. China quickly rose to become Russia's largest mining client. Instead of many Western partners, they withdrew because of the punishment packages. Beijing has always claimed that importing Russian oil is consistent with the need for economic growth and non-police. However, Western countries are increasingly concerned that the flow of energy trade is helping Moscow maintain financial strategies for war. Earlier this year, JAGI used to punish some Chinese businesses with fish committed to support the Russian defense industry. At that time, Beijing reacted harshly, criticized FOXO, applied its norms, and claimed that China was strictly managing its multi-use goods. /r//b/e Bibles repeatedly emphasized that they did not provide lethal weapons for any party related to the Ukrainian conflict. Beijing also has a strong point of view that will ensure energy security in every way possible to protect the national interests of the country. Chinese officials warn that commercial warfare has no winners, and they express concern about punishment measures that can break the global supply of bananas. On the contrary, Moscow tries to take advantage of Asian economies. On a 4-day visit to China last week, the Russian President Vladimir Putin criticized the West for his unacceptable tone in terms of negotiating with economic powers like China or India. Recently, the government media of North Korea announced the dedication of a new tactical missile factory, using the complete automated chain from the preparation of materials, the precision of the household to the rig. This is an important step forward that will enhance both the product and the quality of the weapons. These images that are published show a lot of KN-24S, the short-term tactical missile that is serving the Korean military force that has appeared on the factory floor. Whether or not this facility has produced additional missile lines or not, analysis now suggests that the combination of precise mechanical technology in the country and the CNC input to China can create a leap of trust in the life expectancy, as well as the accuracy of the rocket. And KN-24 described as being able to guide the progress and the engine in the process that allows the precision and purpose of the beating. With a range of about 400 kilometers and a 500-pound warhead, this rocket is significantly smaller than the Russian 9K-720 Iskander-M, but still has the same destructive force in the near range. The Russian military is now using several weapons merged from North Korea, from rising missiles, artillery to tactical ballistic systems. The acceleration of the production of KN-24 is significant because this rocket is prized far beyond OD-21. The weapons line is still in the Russian forces. KN-24 has twice the speed of the Shift, which is said to be significantly cheaper than 9K Iskander-M, while still retaining tremendous power. This allows Moscow to proceed with higher power assaults without further pressure on the cost or run out of strategic reserves. Alone in August 2024, the GED has reached 1,000 KN-24S to the front lines close to the U.S. Air Force. This makes KN-24 one of the most widely deployed ballistics in the world. As this large-scale supply expanded to Russia, fighting fire on the Ukrainian battlefield was thought to be deeply affected. This has helped Moscow to maintain initiative in increasing the attacks from the end of 2023 to this day. The combination of 2 KN-24 from North Korea and Iskander-M from the very Russian chains that are supposed to help Russia maintain the artillery and strike the rocket at a high level, despite the efforts of the West to choke the power of trade. Besides, he also claimed that Russia started the winter strike by destroying the largest power plant in the Kiev with 49 drones. The U.S. Secretary of Defense said that for Ukraine, it is vital to take positive steps to take the following steps. First, we need a clear schedule of regular aid and moving weapons. The head of the Ukraine Defense Department insists that the country needs $6 billion to support the production of drones, roadblocks to protect ordinary people and infrastructure, as well as first-personized aircraft to secure the front lines. Mr. Simihan said, "Well, unfortunately, we could lose the FPV advantage on the front line." Mr. Smian /R once again appeals to the distribution of $60 billion in the 2026 budget for the protection of Europe and Ukraine. According to him, the Ukrainians will continue to pay 100% of their budgets for different needs, but Kiev needs the support and participation of their partners. This is urgent because the Russians are planning to build more into our energy system and infrastructure. Reportedly, the 30th meeting of the Ukrainian Defense Group has taken place in London. The United States Secretary of Defense, John Healey, German Secretary Boris Pistorius, NATO Secretary Moreau, and Secretary of Defense Denis Mian. According to Shimon, the main mission of Ukrainians is to ensure constant military and financial support to increase the air and development of general production in the defense industry. We expect additional support and new projects to increase Ukraine security and all of Europe. During the meeting, he was supposed to fund the production of 1,000 long-range drone planes for the Ukraine army within a year. Meanwhile, Germany is in the process of providing 2 fail-safe defense systems. On the evening of the 9th, according to local time, USA's U.S. news and internet content from Donetsk City are now under the control of Moscow. USA launched a series of new UAV missiles to attack where Russian forces were used as military headquarters. The video from many angles shows that the UAV went down, hit the target, and exploded. Sources confirm that at least 5 major explosions occur within less than 30 seconds just after 19:30 a.m. local time. /r/r/Theo, photos and comments on social networks. The USR rockets were never stopped by the Russian Zero Room when they approached the target. A few minutes after the explosion, a smoke trail didn't appear in the sky with the sound of small-foot soldiers, but didn't mention the daily attack on Donetsk or the sale of the UAV in the evening of the 8th month. The image after the attack showed the gray mushroom smoke columns and 2 large fires that came up at the scene. The attacks were aimed at 3 clusters of houses in the Top Share Company campus, which, according to independent analysts, were once the major military electronic manufacturers before the war. After the attack, on the Donetsk chat groups appears the missile debris that matches the parts used in PCL. Some reports initially claimed that the missiles used were Storm Shadow. The UAV types that run the same fan of Ukraine are seen in the sky Donetsk. The Ukrainian military observers determined that the 2 Russian command stations were hit and damaged by the UN Army Headquarters 41, a large command force in charge of Russian military campaigns at the Middle and East Front, and the headquarters of the 20th Base Gun Range, a major force that was involved in attacking the USR position in the west of Donetsk/R. According to a U.S. news firm, the building in the former stock office was an automated research institute that was hit by 2 USV missiles. In an article published on Telegram, the famous U.S. military officer Kirino Sazonov wrote, "Donetsk is being severely shot with multiple targets, but top is certainly a priority. It means the target is huge, but the leaky information indicates there's a command center there, where people carry very high cans." USA announced its start of mass production of the UAV rocket PLO, a UAV that's been running with jets since December 2037 and then K announced to produce about 100 rockets a month, but PLO rarely appeared since then except for its first confirmed use in June. During meetings with NATO representatives earlier this year, Ukrainian officials reported that Poncho had a range of 700 miles, 700 kilometers, 700 kilometers/h, produced in water with 70% domestic parts. The size of the warhead is military secret, but according to the Ukrainian military research team, Militani, some experts estimate the warheads weigh about 50 kilograms. Russian Communion in Donetsk gave detailed information on the effects of the attack and confirmed the UAV jet was almost certain that the U.S. Polo hit this city, but ignored the number of targets and the damage caused by the Russian army. / on TV channel Binet. The USR attack caused 2 civilians to die, 16 injured, 18 buildings damaged, including local government offices, a school, a child, a household, and residents, at the same time determined that there were no attacks on the ground. Although the Donut headquarters seemed to be the main target of the UAV hits far away from August 8th and 9th months ago, other invasions into the Russian airspace were also reported on by ground explosions in other parts of the night. Local media could result in an attack near the oil filtering plant and the city's oil station on the Black Coast. The governor of the Veniam and Kadyrov confirmed that a civilian died, but no details of the UAV hit. No harm done. Not yet by where Mr. Putin is, but there is no evidence that the Russian leader is a target or an influence. In the Belgorod area near Proka village, according to both the Ukrainian media and the Russian media, the UAV has attacked and set fire to the oil refinery plant. The satellite images from NASA's firms on September 9th show that more than half of the sad Proka filtering plant is caught in flames with a focus of fuel tanks. Since the end of July, USA has launched a campaign to undermine Russia's oil filtering power using a remote UAV to attack oil refineries in western Russia. So far, 13 major oil filtering facilities have been attacked, some of which have been hit 2 or 3 times. The Zaki storm estimates that attacks have reduced at least 20% of Russia's oil filtering power. The fact that the factories had to be shut down caused a lack of oil and gas to disrupt their supply in Samara, Buryatina, the Far East, and Sakhalin Islands. Despite diplomatic efforts to end the conflict, the Ukrainian battlefield is still experiencing very stressful conflicts. The KSIE Samari News has continued a series of attacks on the energy infrastructure, especially the power plants and the first strikes on some bridges that break through the Dnipro River. This has led to a serious blockage of miles that has led to the great hardship of the Ukrainian esophagus. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues to attack all across the line. /r/st on data collected may conclude that Kiev's defense system at Zaporizhzhia, Liman, Service and Kupiansk are about to collapse. The fiercest competition between the north of Donetsk around the cement and the Russian troops are moving ever further south and is pressuring at a distance of about 7 kilometers on either side of the field, moving towards the other side of the front of the line of the field in which the force is being reached with an active result in the following months control of the advance of the command of the Vomik. They walked along 2 opposite points as well as through a canyon and up to the north edge of Popia's stone mine. Ukrainian soldiers also tried to infiltrate north of Novotoreski. In small groups, the Russian army continued to take back the previous lost positions on the west side of the Bow, after the Ukrainian army could not cut them off. They headed west to the suburbs east of Novikov that held some of the edge of the forest and took back the northern part of the Hova-Banka Canyon, and continued to strike west across the Nikaripka. In addition, at some point the front lines moved west over the last 3 weeks through Moscova. Forces have recovered the Durans village and the train station back to the same name that's reinforced their position there. /r/ due lack of position. The Ukrainian forces have withdrawn more than 3 kilometers west, creating a vast gray area covered by the UAV FPV of Ukraine. Russian spy units are active here, attempting to access the shafts of Byliska coal mine and enter some of the northeast and eastern streets of Berlis, where the Kiev forces are trying to stop. On the other hand, the Russian control is about 364 km2. The Radakai channel says that after 1 day of temporary defeat on the 8th of the month, the Russian army turned the flag against the enemy's counterattack in the Dipolai area. The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian forces, Alexander Sisky, observed that Moscow is preparing an attack on the entire front of the war. The Ukrainian forces were unable to penetrate the Russian front in the region of Okako, Nikanaraka, Savor, and approach the line along the Kazan-Tory River. The Ukrainian army simply didn't have enough force to carry out the Russian campaign and to take advantage of the military force at this point in the K-force at the direction of Propoli, even worse than it did a week ago. The Ukrainian team countered from Belis, trapped in the same deep fin as the previous units had attacked along the way of the village of Zolotoy Kolts. Now the Russian forces have surrounded the KF forces that have infiltrated Suvodovo. /in/Laurel shocks are hiding in dry mountain complements and growing forests on the road to the village. Russian soldiers are killing bubbles caused by enemy attacks. As in the Zololods area, the Ukrainian forces can't withdraw from Servolovo because of the terrain and an attempt to run back to their original position can lead to serious consequences. However, the Kiev command had virtually no opportunity to rescue their forces that had been surrounded by half a circle. Failing in an attack by the Ukrainian forces gave the Ukrainian army a head start for 51 Russian troops to attack, and now the Ukrainian army has no time left for soldiers who are trapped. The result of a close counterattack by the Ukrainian army can be described as a waste of force. The Ukrainian forces put themselves in similar situations when the Moscow forces began to break through in the first half of August. At that time, the Ukrainians didn't have a significant defense force. But it was a terrible result to see that taking the initiative toward Propolar capital belonged to the Russian army. In the near future, an inverse of the shake is certain to occur. This could lead to the Russian attack on Bilisky. After all, the Ukrainian forces that could have protected the settlement were wasted on useless attacks. According to some expert reviews, the Kiev forces hold several positions in the southwest forest of Redkopka on the south side of the road leading into the city of Kupiansk. There is no indication of a stable presence of Ukrainian soldiers. So far, the Ukrainian forces have not been able to stop the Russian army further into Kupiansk. Although we've moved more of the UAV units, including those of the Magia team, however, the progress of Russia is not fast, which means that the near future might still be the same, struggling to take a position without a decisive breakthrough. The reinforcement is being carried out by Moscow's forces, which is expected to turn into another attack in about a week or two. In the meantime, USA's 8th evening report from the beginning of the day, there have been 158 wars on the front of the battle, 45 of which take place in the far end. Moscow launched 5 missiles carrying out more than 50 airstrikes, dropping 95 guidance bombs. In addition, they took the suicide of 1952 UAV and carried out 3,449 artillery campaigns. The U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff determined that the basic defenses stopped the enemy's attempts to infiltrate the enemy in Kastozansky, Vuz, Kupiansk, Limong, Service, Kamatok, Pokrop, Perosa, Pablo, Dnipro, and Torres. In connection with the war that lasted over the last 3 years in Ukraine and the sale of the serum in 2014, Western countries have imposed tens of thousands of punishments on Russia. However, Russian leaders say that in order for this country's economy to grow faster than the G7 countries, and in spite of its predictions of collapse, the Russian war economy grew 4.1% in 2023 and 3% in 2025. On September 8th, the trader of the Kremlin, the Mitsubishi, chooses to say that both Ukraine and Europe are doing everything in their power to force the United States to resort to punishment. But no punishment warrant can force the Russian Union to change the consistent position that our president has repeatedly spoken of. Mr. BCO may say that the number of punishments that have never been imposed on our country in nearly 4 years has not been affected. Mr. Brzep stressed that Moscow wanted to achieve his goals through political and diplomatic measures, but because Europe and Kiev didn't want to, Russia would continue military action in Ukraine. The closest move to his implied will tighten the punishment warrants for Moscow or Russian oil buyers. In the meantime, the chairman of the General Council of Gino Antonio Costa says that the new punishments of the European Union are being combined with the U.S. Last July, Eglantine officially passed the 18th punishment package against Russia in connection with the U.S. conflict in Ukraine. In the last 3 years of the conflict, both the Russians and the Ukrainians have made considerable use of the shield of the enemy's 3 meters of resources. In June 2023, a video that began to spread on social networks seems to indicate that a UAV drone destroyed a Ukrainian tank in a major explosion. However, during the Russian war, not everything was what it seemed. Right then, the Ukrainians released a recording of a soldier pointing his finger at the burnt-out wreck and saying it was just a wooden tank. This is just 100,000 fake military models used by Ukrainians and Russia to make each other waste their ammunition, time, and energy. Almost anything that appears on the front lines, from small radar, grenade launchers, zip trucks, and even soldiers, can be fake. These models can pack flat, pump steam, build 2D, or create radar hallucinations about a tank because of radio radiation reflection in a special way. In some weapons developed in Ukraine, at least half of them are fake. Among the most popular models that the Ukrainian army uses are the fake version of the M77 grenades that you've built that are famous for your motivation and accuracy. Western allies are said to have given more than 150 guns of this kind. Ruslan Ruslenko reports that his team of volunteers, Nachasi, built and delivered to the Ukrainian forces about 160 M77 models. The thing that makes them popular is that just 3 minutes and no equipment can be mounted right on the front line. In Pablo Narosny of another group of volunteers named Rifna Posta says that at any given time there are 10 to 15 fake M7s being produced. Their model is made out of flat-pack plywood, which is about $500 to $600. While the Russians often use orchids, each worth about $35,000 to attack cheap bait. A fake M77 from the group of Narosny men who were nicknamed Talia lived for a year on the front line, and at least 14 bullets from the Russian UAV, which were still patched up by Ukrainian soldiers with tape and screws, and went on to show the battle. In order to attract the enemy's fire, it involves the trail of wheels, crates, or even toilets that may deceive not only the enemy, but also the officers who come to see it. One of the 33th Division officials of Ukraine, nicknamed Karima, said that once in a caravan, a commanding officer came to check was deceived. Where did the M77 grenades come from? Another strategy, he said, was to quickly move real artillery, such as the mortar after shooting and replacing it with a false model. You say they're really ideal to deceive your opponent. Makes them waste expensive resources and nothing. They're working, and we need about half of the UAV in recent Russian airstrikes are actually bait weapons. Now the ratio is 50-50. Half the real UAV Shah, half the model. Sometimes it's just a piece of plywood that looks like students put together. But on the Ukrainian radar, it looks exactly like the real UAV Shah. A Russian company called Rusbin produces many types of models from 2D misdirecting intelligence from the air or satellite to the model of catching heat signals from the engine, radio signals from the soldier radio or reflector that disturbs the enemy radar. Russian volunteers have created uniforms to simulate human heat signatures and Ukrainian surface cameras. The dummy's body was rolled with a heat cord under his coat. Of course, the fake model wasn't a new idea and a coincidence. Before the knockdown took away in World War II, a complete fake force was created in Britain with tanks and model airplanes. It's part of the fire plan to hide reality on the ground and give allies the element of surprise needed to open an attack. Military technology has improved greatly since World War II. For example, the UAV and the sleep-free system are now key elements on the battlefield. However, camouflage technology has always played a significant role. Magia Nims recently reported that the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán once again caused quite a stir when he announced that Ukraine might be divided into 3 parts after the armed conflict with Russia. Orbán reports that the fate of Ukrainians has been determined and that now the European nations are discussing the security guarantees for Ukraine. Prime Minister Zamperini adds that the problem is actually not whether or not a region is controlled by the Russians, but how many territories it will cover and which areas it will cover. In particular, Mr. O concluded that an area controlled by the Russians existed. In addition, Hungarian leaders claim that the boundaries of so-called non-military areas are still being discussed. Prime Minister Orbán has long been accused of standing up to Russia. Kalberger has repeatedly stopped the aid of Aegis for the Kiev and opposed the punishments for Moskva. Inudabes has also opposed Kiev's joining the Ebola, a position recently described by Zelensky President Vladimir Zelensky, especially when even Russia has accepted the European cohesion of Buri. However, Boban asserts that Hungary is not a Ukrainian country and wants a future for Ukraine. Before that, RBC Ukrainian News was reported to express indignation over Ukrainian attacks and Duspa's lead line. Secretary Hungar, Peter Szijjarto called the attacks on Duspa an attempt to gain access to the energy security of his country. President Noki's statement was made within the framework of his visit, Titva. Recently, President Naroki has also opposed the government policy of Donatos's government about expanding the protection rights of the Ukrainians in Poland. Meanwhile, President Nada maintained his support and prompted early negotiations on the USRU's participation in the USR, viewing this as a strategic goal to strengthen European security. The Lvov leaders have repeatedly urged Lvov's leaders to commit the Ukrainian load in early 2030. Theo. In the Hungarian context, firmly opposed the process of joining Buri. The fact that the Polish president and his co-president Lvov disagreed on this issue could cause negotiations to continue to be delayed. Negative impact on the process of joining the FA in the process over the course of time. Our USAR military forces have launched a hot power base in the Kiev area, causing the blackout of the electrical power system and the supply of the fire. This incident has been just one day after Russia's biggest airstrike since the outbreak of a full-scale conflict in 2022. The goal of the attack was to increase the difficulty of Ukraine's citizens, many families, hospitals, schools, and children's homes into a lack of light and warmth. The rescue and engineering forces have been launched urgently to overcome the consequences. The Russian Defense Department confirmed that it was targeted for Ukrainian energy subservation. In the meantime, the U.S. government took Ukrainiango national power, saying that many of the energy facilities in different parts of the world were also attacked to a local power failure. Most of the customers who were returned to power on the morning of the 8th month and the repair operation are still going on. The Kiev-Mola-Karashnik area, or the attack, has damaged the gas network, causing more than 8,000 residents in 8 neighborhoods to be cut off within the next 2 days to do the work. Sergei Kurenko, director of Yasno Energy Company, said that in the last few weeks, Russia has been constantly attacking energy facilities in many areas. In the context of the Ukrainians trying to recruit because of the absence of combatants, the detective on human rights at CCHA, Mansa Sofaf, revealed to Russian news firm RIA Novosti that the Ukrainian mothers were sending a petition to the Republic of Chechnya Resort as well as Knia's civil rights agencies to find and help in finding their son. Santa A says that the reputation of the leader of CCHA is not limited to the territory of the Republic, but to many parts of the world. He said that hundreds of such letters were sent to him, in which Ukrainian women expressed their faith in Carterop wrote that they did not believe in people of nationalism and spread Zithrop. The human rights inspector Chechnya says that this job is being carried out directly by Congressman Duma of Samsar, who is engaged in the trade process and is a member of Russian civil rights. Dr. Sana F. also mentioned that the CNA leadership has been supporting civilians in the area of military campaigns. Over and over again, the public funds bearing the name of the leader Katarop have also sent humanitarian aid there several times. Russia's making rapid moves in the USV driving row with Ukrainians. In particular, the Russian national media recently reported that the country handed over the US's first fiber-dwelling cable to the Endangered Sea Team. This USV was developed by the INLC Research and Production Center and was released the image. According to this gas operation is a multitasking system that can act like a suicide, a platform that carries UAV, FPV, and even a non-employer of U.S. Navy systems that will make the U.S. behave like a mini airport. In theory, this system can significantly expand its range of activity because USV can carry about a dozen killed cables. This allows for maintaining stable communication, more noise-free than radio or satellite communication that is easily interrupted by electronic warfare. Before that, on the ground, Russia's UAV fiber optics had created the challenge of being immune to noisy measures. However, there are still factors that can challenge the operation of this weapon. The fiber optic cord used with a protective shell makes it significantly heavier than the light fiber used for the UAV FPV. The signal strength is also a challenge. To be effective, USV needs to be able to cover dozens, maybe even hundreds of kilometers. The image shows that the Russian US is relatively small, but can still carry a few UAV FPVs to carry out attacks against the enemy's coastal cities. The arrival of systems like this cannot be taken lightly. Despite limited resources and abilities, the USV using Hagen is still a technological adaptation that can be extended over time. Before that, Ukraine had shown advantages to USV. Without a Russian military revelation, Kiev has worked hard to develop small weapons fast in an unsymmetry war. In the latest development, the Ukrainian Free Coast Guard of 40 introduced USV Barracuda designed for modern fire support missions, evacuation, and supplies in the most dangerous areas. This system was designed to cover extremely dangerous tasks while reducing the risk of the soldiers gave the Ukrainian forces a new advantage at sea. These drones are equipped with artificial intelligence elements, modern tracking systems, and remote control. These technologies ensure that accurate motivations in complex marine environments regardless of time or weather. Interestingly, developers insist that Paracuda remains effective even when it comes to enemy forces that show that tenacity in combat. /N/Subacuda can be used to perform fire attacks by quickly spreading out of coastal areas and shipping ammunition into the front lines. Tasks that are both weak and extremely dangerous using human means again. September 9th, Israel IBNF and the Sinbad Intelligence Service announced that they attacked the Hamas leadership in a national airstrike. /r/h.h.u.u. If it's known as Qatar, but given after reports of major explosions in Doha to lead the senior of Hamas in residence. Qatar is one of the Arab nations with Egypt that is mediating the negotiations between Israel and Hamas. The statement stated that the members of the attacked leadership had directed the activities of the organization for years and were directly responsible for the attack on October 7th, as well as the ongoing war against the State of Israel. The Israeli team said that they had taken measures to reduce civilian casualties in the attack, including the use of accurate weapons and other intelligence sources. Israel's negatives say more than 10 Israeli Air Force planes dropped more than 10 bullets in the attack against Hamas leader in Qatar. According to American media, the center of the building that was attacked seems to have collapsed. The image from the scene shows that the building was damaged in front of the building, but some of it remained intact. Qatar later strongly condemned Israel's air raid. This spokesman also claims that the attack on Israel is a serious threat to security as well as the safety of its citizens and its residents. He added that Qatar was conducting an investigation at the highest levels. The Arab media reports that Hamas top leaders were all present when the building where they met was hit by Israel. /r/among Ham's leaders who were attacked at Doha headquarters was said to have Kaylan Anya, leader Ham of Gaza. In addition, many other high-ranking characters are said to include Jaha Zaprin, head of Hamad on the West Coast, Mahadwiz, president of the Council of Surah of Hamad, and Kal Masan, head of Hamas in foreign lands. /r/Banjazara led a high-ranking official of Hamas to say that the headboard of Hamas, led by Mr. Kian England, had survived the raid. The Saudi-British channel, however, was previously believed to have included Kaylan England, Colin, Jahir, and Niza Awadamla. The Israeli Prime Minister's office, Benjamin Netanyahu, says that the air raid on Ham leaders at Doha was completely built by Israel. Israel's initials, Israel, and Israel took full responsibility. In a general statement, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Secretary said that they were going to decide to do an attack after the shooting in East Jerusalem that killed 6 Israelis and the attack on an Israeli tank in northern Gaza that killed 4 soldiers. State clearly, the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister believe this operation is legitimate. The Israeli media reports that U.S. President Donald Trump is reported for an airstrike plan. 2 days ago, Mr. Trump gave Ham his last warning. I warned Ham about the consequences. If you don't accept it, this is the last warning that there won't be any more. However, on September 9th, President Trump confirmed his decision to attack the Hamad Leadership Board of Qatar, which belongs to Israel Benjamin Netanyahu, not to you. The White Master insists that the single unit attacked the target within the territory of Qatar, a sovereign nation and its closest ally to the United States. The country is working hard and brave enough to take risks with us to promote peace that doesn't serve Israel or the United States goals. However, he expressed his support for the view that Hamas was a legitimate target. The White House press, Caroline Leavitt, said that the U.S. Army had informed the Qataran authorities that Israel was going to launch the airstrike. The teller said President Tadashi directed a senior assistant who warned Steve Toilets before Israel's attack. Mrs. Litt, however, refused to state in detail which party had foretold Washington. Mrs. Leavitt called this an unfortunate incident and said that President Leskovar was sorry about the incident. The U.S. of Qatar is an important ally in the Gulf and is based on Doha to play the intermediate role in the negotiations in order to reach a ceasefire agreement in Bologna. After the attack, Leskovar wired him with both Israel Benjamin Netanyahu and the Kingdom of Qatar, Sim bin Hamad Al. The U.S. is trying to push a truce to change hostages in order to ensure that the return of the remaining hostages is being arrested and prepared for the post-conflict plan in Gaza. He said that Qatar played a very active role in the attempt to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of all the hostages held by Ham. Mr. Gutter said to the reporters, "All right-hand parties are working hard to achieve a permanent ceasefire rather than destroy it." As for himself, the Arab State Department of SEU reports that Prince Athos bin Salman was conducting a radio call with the Kingdom of Qatar ex Emir. During the radio call, the Prince of Israel's assault on the leaders of the Hamad movement in Doha, which included a gross violation of the state's sovereignty, which constituted a serious crime and violation of international law. The Prince of Arabia asserts that the kingdom is ready to deploy all possible abilities to support Qatar and support the measures that Qatar takes to protect and maintain its sovereignty. From Abu Dhabi, Foreign Minister of the Arab Miners United the UAE, Guyana Binds, announced a strong bond of unity with Qatar after Israel's air raid. The jury, in turn, made it reasonable to determine the level of compensation, considering the serious details of the case. In his life's appeal, Leslie referred to the possibility of excommunicating the president and claiming that the related statements were given in the primary role in the North Court to abandon this argument. Earlier, on June 13th, the appeal court had also kept the verdict that he had been charged with repaying $5 million US to Bahrain in a defamatory and sensitive speech case. /Bakarin was the pen of the magazine who accused Rakarin of attacking him at a store in New York in 1996. Kaberger repeatedly denied that the fish was made up. In two judgments, the court held that Kakanakis was responsible for both the cost of his prestigious spirit, $18.3 million US, and the fine for adding $65 million. The Korean news media reported that on the 9th of the month the country's Missile Control Agency was conducting another static test of the massive thrust-based fuel engine using carbon fiber on the 8th of the month. According to the Korean Central Press Class KNNA, President Kim Song personally supervised this important experiment. This is the 9th silent trial and is the last time in the development. KNA trusts guided Kim's message that this new missile engine signals an important change in the expansion and reinforcement of North Korea's nuclear forces. The image published by the state media shows that Kim was using the lens to observe the fire from the engine test. Another picture shows a red and white fire coming from the trial. Over the years, North Korea has been conducting long-range missile launch tests to develop the modern arsenal of weapons. The amphetamines have also released snake-based changes that are more mobile, hidden, and moving faster than the liquid fuel rockets. In this year, North Korea has repeatedly declared no intention of giving up nuclear weapons. On the 8th of the month, Japan's radio TBS said that the LDP Liberal Party was finishing its final unprepared to organize the election on October 4th, the same day that high-level communists of the Liberal Democratic Party began campaigning to inherit the Prime Minister of Isabas Sigir one day after he announced the resignation of the Free Democratic Party in the last 7 months. On the 8th day of the same month, former Japanese Foreign Minister Motegi Toshimitsu announced that he was going to be in the race, while Kyoto news firms led some sources to suggest that he was avoiding the cabinet or Yoshimasa's office expressed the intention of struggling. Hei was then the 4th of the 9 candidates, and Mr. Motegi was the 6th. There are also other potential candidates, including the senior Congresswoman Takachi Sanai and the Agricultural Minister Kazumi Zairo. If she is elected, Takachi has the opportunity to become the first female prime minister in Japanese history. Meanwhile, Koizumi Zairo, the son of former Prime Minister Koizumi Junichiro, was known as the agricultural minister of his time, ISBA. He ran for party leadership last year with a reformer towards the goal of restoring public trust in a party caught in scandals. If you win, Ms. Izumi may become Japan's youngest prime minister in the modern era. The current party leadership will remain until the election process is over. Now that the Free Democratic Party doesn't see the majority in both senates, the new party leader won't suddenly become the new prime minister, but has to go through votes in 2 Congress. Prime Minister Isaba's decision to resign can lead to hidden political instability for the fourth largest economy in the world. This news, however, is received in a positive way by the market again. On the morning of the 8th month, Japan's stock has increased dramatically. It's been weakened and the stock market is stable. As a result of the investment world, it is hoped that the next person, ISBA, would increase government spending to promote the economy.